Hey, hi everyone! A lot of you really loved the FEMA video I posted last week. Thank you for all the messages. Today I'm coming back with a similar format, but this time the topic's a little different. The meals the military gives soldiers, MREs, and the food storage methods the Amish community has used for centuries. Two completely different worlds, but the results are genuinely surprising. I hope you enjoy it, guys. Let's get started.
One of them fields one of the most advanced militaries on Earth, satellites, drones, a logistics system worth billions. The other is a community that refuses electricity and still travels by horse and buggy. They have no contact with each other, and on the surface, nothing in common. And yet both of them, with no knowledge of the other, have arrived at almost exactly the same answer to one question. How do you keep food from spoiling for years? One got there with a research budget, the other with patience, but both land on the same point. And in the middle of the list, there is one item the military itself openly restricts soldiers. Get a specific warning not to take more than one of these per day. I'll show you why in a moment. But stay to the end, because when we reach number 1, you'll see a single number that ties all 15 of these items together. A number that led the military's laboratories and generations of Amish wisdom to the same conclusion, without either of them ever knowing it. 15 items, from the soldier's meal to the Amish kitchen. Let's begin. Warning! This video is independent research. All information is based on publicly available official and historical sources. My goal is to inform. Let's begin. Now picture this. A family of 4, in a house with no power, at the end of the 3rd day, looking for the answer to one serious problem in 2 places. On one side, they're wondering what's inside the pack the military hands to every soldier. On the other, they're wondering what never runs out in their Amish neighbor's cellar. 2 completely different systems, 2 completely different philosophies. But both of them are fighting the same basic enemy, moisture and oxygen. And the solutions they found to win that fight overlap to a surprising degree. In this video, we compare 15 items, some only the military's, some only the Amish's, but each one answering the same basic question. Without electricity or refrigeration, how can food wait safely for years? The answer, in 2 completely different worlds, is surprisingly similar. 15. The soldier's main course, the MRE's retort pouch. Everyone calls it soldier food, but the official name is meal, ready to eat, the MRE. The main course inside is sealed in a multi-layer aluminum-lined foil using a technique called retort packaging. It's the flexible version of the tin can sterilized with high heat and pressure, then closed airtight, which produces a package far lighter and far more portable than a can. The military's official standard is clear. An MRE has to last 3 years at an average temperature of 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's more than an estimate. It's a figure verified in the lab through accelerated aging tests. And in cooler conditions, that window stretches much further in some tests. MREs stored around 50 degrees Fahrenheit came out safe after more than 5 years. Temperature isn't so much the enemy as a part of the equation. The colder it is, the more slowly chemical breakdown is observed to move. On the Amish side, the same principle is applied with a different tool. Home canning in glass jars, the same retort logic sterilize with heat and pressure, seal airtight. The military's billion-dollar foil technology and a glass jar in an Amish kitchen use the same basic science. Kill the microbes, keep the oxygen out. Different centuries, same solution. And here's a detail most people don't know. Ball brand canning jars have been made in nearly the same design since the 1880s, a technology that hasn't changed in more than a century because it already works perfectly. Amish families pass these jars down through the generations. In some cellars, jars from a grandmother are still in use. 14. The root cellar. On Amish farms, nearly every home has a root cellar, an underground cellar beneath it or nearby. It's the oldest, most reliable method of refrigeration without electricity. Thanks to the natural insulation of the earth, no matter what the air temperature is outside, the inside of the cellar usually stays right around 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, exactly the range where vegetables and fruit last the longest. Potatoes, carrots, cabbage, apples, in these cellars they can stay fresh for months, sometimes until the next harvest. The secret is moisture control. Too dry, and the vegetables shrivel. Too damp, and they mold. Through generations of experience, Amish families developed methods like burying produce in sand or sawdust to balance the humidity with no thermometer, no hygrometer, just touch and observation. There's no military equivalent. A soldier in the field can't dig an earthen cellar. Instead, MREs are designed for fast access and portability. So here the two systems diverge. The Amish optimize for a settled way of life, the military for a life on the move, but both arrive at the same goal: keeping food unspoiled until the next moment of need. Modern engineers call this principle passive cooling, holding a stable temperature with no energy at all, using only the physical properties of the structure itself, exactly the idea being rediscovered today in green building design. So how did the military solve the problem of a meal that can't be buried in the ground but still needs to be kept warm? That's next. 13. The MRE's heater, the Flameless ration heater. This is one of the least known but most clever pieces of engineering on the list. In every MRE pack there's a small, flat pouch, the Flameless ration heater. Inside is a fine magnesium iron alloy powder. Pour a few sips of water into the pouch, and a chemical reaction begins, an exothermic reaction, one that gives off heat and it warms your meal in minutes, with no fire and no electricity. The technology is so effective that the military specifically warns soldiers not to hold the mouth of the pouch near their face, or in an enclosed space. The reaction releases hydrogen gas, which, if it builds up in a closed vehicle or tent, can create a theoretical flammability risk. So this incredibly useful technology is a scientific reaction that has to be handled with care, power, and caution, always travel together in military engineering. On the Amish side, there's no such thing as flameless heating. They use a wood stove, an open fire, not electricity or gas, but flame all the same. Here, the two systems fully diverge, and it shows us that both approaches have their own limits. Military technology is optimized for speed and concealment. A soldier in hostile territory can't risk the visibility of smoke or flame, so chemical heating is a tactical advantage in military terms. The Amish method is optimized for sustainability and repeatability. Wood is an endless resource, renewed every year, which means not depending on a chemical pouch. An interesting note: this heater technology was so well liked that it entered the civilian market too. Sold as a flameless heater among camping and hunting products, one of the rare examples of military R&D leaking into everyday life. But now we move to a problem as important as preserving food, the oldest method of all for stopping food from spoiling in the first place. 12. The Amish tradition of salting and smoking. In the world before refrigeration, there were two main ways to preserve meat: salting and smoking. Amish communities keep these methods alive with a care the industrialized world abandoned long ago. Pork is coated in a thick layer of salt, and left for weeks, the salt draws the water out of the meat's cells, creating a low-moisture environment where bacteria can't survive. Then they usually apply cold smoking, a low-heat process that runs for hours, sometimes days, providing both flavor and an extra layer of protection. Ham and bacon prepared this way can last for months without refrigeration and under the right conditions all year round. Modern food science backs this up. Salt and smoke are two mechanisms that both stop bacterial growth and reinforce each other, and compounds in the smoke also slow the fat from going rancid. On some Amish farms, the smokehouse is one of the oldest, most used structures on the property, sometimes a place that has carried the same wood smoke smell for 3 generations, become a part of the family's own history. On the military side, there's almost no need for this method, because MREs are already preserved with industrial sterilization. But in pre-World War II, military rations, older systems, no longer in use, salted meat was common. So the military historically went through the same method too, then left it behind with technology. The Amish, by contrast, consciously reject that technology and insist on the proven old method. This isn't a lack of technology, but a deliberate choice, because not depending on electricity is one of the community's core values. 11. Salt and sodium density in the MRE. An MRE carries about 1,200 calories on average, designed so that 3 a day, roughly 3,600 calories, feed a soldier doing intense physical work. But that calorie density comes at a cost. Sodium. A single MRE generally contains 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams of sodium, nearly half the recommended daily upper limit, in one meal. The reason is tactical. Sodium is a natural preservative that extends a food's shelf life, and the military finds a product that lasts 3 years, logistically more valuable than a fresh one that lasts a few months. But this also explains why a civilian is not advised to live on MREs alone for long. In a 3-day crisis, it's no problem, but over weeks, the load on blood pressure and the kidneys starts to build. Even the military's own nutrition guides state plainly that the MRE is designed as short-term operational food, not intended to be a long-term sole source of nutrition. We're halfway here. And everything you've seen so far was really just groundwork. Because in the second half of the list, there's an item both sides reached for the same jar, with no knowledge of each other, and it's so simple you'll smile the first time you hear it. In the Amish kitchen, salt is a key preservative too. But the ratio is different. Homemade pickles and salted meats are usually under the control of the recipe itself, more variable than the MRE's industrial standardization. Both systems use the same chemical agent, sodium, but the military turns it into a scientific formula, while the Amish rely on a recipe precision handed down over generations. An Amish family's pickle recipe rests on a how much salt is enough knowledge passed from grandmother to mother, tongue to tongue, with no gram measurements, only by eye and experience. 10. The Amish grain store wheat and flour. On Amish farms, large metal or wooden grain bins are a standard sight. Whole wheat berries, under the right conditions dry, cool, protected from pests, can last practically indefinitely. Some Amish families store wheat many times over their yearly need, not just for their own family, but as a shared safety net for the church community. Once wheat is milled into flour, the shelf life drops dramatically. Whole grain flour can go rancid within a few months because of the oil it contains. That's why Amish tradition prefers to store wheat as whole berries and mill it in small mills when needed fresh flour. Always, never flour that sat around for weeks. On the military side, there's no direct equivalent because MREs are already processed and ready to eat. But the same logic runs through the military's own historical supply chain principles. Store in a minimally processed, stable form, and do the final step at the moment of need. A strategy known in logistics as last-minute processing, and, by coincidence, resting on the same logic as the Amish wheat and flour practice. Big food companies actually use the same principle. Flour mills are usually built close to demand, for exactly this reason, because the later a processed product is made, the fresher it stays. 9. The MRE's chocolate, the formula that won't melt in heat. If you had a chocolate bar in your pocket, in a 120-degree desert, you'd expect it to melt and make a mess, right? For military food engineers, that was unacceptable. The chocolate in MREs is made with a different formula than ordinary store chocolate, specially prepared with high melting point fats. So it can hold up without melting, even at temperatures up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's an engineering solution developed specifically for soldiers serving in deserts or hot climates. This actually illustrates a bigger principle. Food engineering aims not just to prevent spoilage, but to preserve physical form. Honey follows a similar principle. Thanks to its low moisture content, it neither spoils nor loses its chemical stability. On the Amish side, there's no engineering at this level, of course. But by a similar logic, some sweets, honey-based candies, for example, are deliberately made with heat-resistant recipes as a portable energy source for workers out in the fields during summer. Most of these treats, thanks to their low moisture content, resist both heat and time, exactly the problem MRE chocolate is trying to solve, solved with a different ingredient, EIJ8T, the MRE's peanut butter packet, an unexpected point of overlap. Now we come to an interesting coincidence. Most MRE menus include a small foil packet of peanut butter, the military's choice, because on its own it delivers high calories, protein, and fat, requires no cooking, and hardly spoils at all. Military food scientists chose it years ago because almost no other food matches its calorie-to-weight ratio. The same product, for the same reason, is found in an ordinary Amish cellar, maybe in a jar, maybe homemade. But by the same logic, a food that takes up little space, lasts a long time, and packs high energy. The military's nutrition scientists and an Amish farmer's mother arrived at the same jar without ever meeting. This is maybe the simplest but most striking example on the list. Sometimes the most advanced science lands in the same place as the oldest traditional wisdom, because both are answering the same physical reality. And this coincidence doesn't stand alone. Honey-based products and trail mix-style nut blends have also become standard in MREs, just like the combination you'd find in an Amish cellar. Both sides, with no knowledge of each other, rely on the same three ingredients: fat, protein, and natural sugar. 7. The Amish canned pickles and fermented foods. Maybe the most common practice in the Amish kitchen. Pickles and fermented vegetables, sauerkraut, pickled cucumbers, fermented beets, all of them are no refrigeration preservation method where salt and natural acidity stop bacteria. A jar of properly made sauerkraut can last for months in a cool cellar, sometimes close to a year. Fermentation has one more bonus benefit. It produces probiotic bacteria that support digestive health, something modern nutrition science rediscovered in recent years, but that the Amish have already practiced for generations. On the military side, there's almost no fermented food in MREs. The reason is simple. The fermentation process is logistically unpredictable and doesn't fit a standard production line. Here, the two systems clearly diverge. The Amish trust natural biological processes. The military trusts controllable industrial ones, but both reach the same goal, a long shelf life. Only their paths are diametrically opposite. One embraces uncertainty, the other tries to eliminate it entirely. Now we come to the carefully limited item I promised you in the intro, a product designed for a soldier, but one the military's own handbook specifically warns not to overuse. 6. The MRE's caffeinated gum, a carefully limited item. And now we come to the item I promised in the intro. Some MREs contain a small packet of gum, but not ordinary mint gum, a special formula with 100 milligrams of caffeine in each piece, close to a regular cup of coffee. The military developed it specifically for soldiers on long watches who have to fight off sleeplessness. The gum form lets the caffeine absorb far faster through the tissues of the mouth without waiting to pass through the stomach. But because of exactly that speed, the military's own usage guide carries a clear warning: don't consume more than a certain number per day, because the fast absorption can raise the risk of heart palpitations and overstimulation. So this is a substance deliberately designed to be strong, but deliberately limited, an example that shows both the power and the caution of military engineering. On the Amish side, the source of caffeine is mostly coffee, consumed in a measured, traditional way. No engineering, just a centuries-old habit. Here too, the two systems diverge, but interestingly, both answer the same need: staying awake and focused over long hours with different tools. The military optimized chemistry for speed. The Amish optimized habit for sustainability. One wants an effect within seconds, the other looks for a slow, steady energy source spread across the rhythm of the day. 5. The Amish method of preserving with lard. Before refrigeration, another classic way to preserve cooked meat: burying it in lard. Cooked pieces of meat are fully submerged in liquid lard and left to cool when the fat hardens. It forms a seal that completely isolates the meat from contact with air. Once contact with air is cut off, oxygen-driven spoilage largely stops. This method rests on the same scientific principle as the confit technique in French cuisine, different cultures. Independently finding the same solution to the same physical reality, oxygen equals spoilage. Amish communities use this method heavily, especially as preparation for winter during hog butchering season. Almost no part of a pig is wasted, even its fat used to preserve the next batch of meat, in a closed loop. On the military side, the vacuum-sealed, oxygen-free packaging of MREs applies the same principle at industrial scale, using aluminum foil instead of fat. But the logic is identical: keep oxygen out, stop the spoilage. The only real difference between these two methods is the material: one a natural layer of fat, the other a synthetic foil, but both serve the same physical barrier function, both managing to block oxygen from reaching the food at the molecular level. 4. The Amish haybox method, cooking without burning fuel. This is maybe the least known but cleverest technique on the list. The haybox: after boiling a dish for a few minutes, you place it in a tightly insulated box, usually packed with hay, and close it. The food keeps cooking for hours on its own, retained heat with no extra fuel spent. Boil a stew or soup for a few minutes in the morning and put it in the box, and by evening, you can find it fully cooked. This method was developed to save fuel in eras when wood or coal was precious, and Amish communities still use it today, especially for dishes that need long cooking. Modern thermal cooker products are really nothing more than the plastic and foam version of this century-old idea. Some energy-saving cookers sold for hundreds of dollars online are doing basically nothing different from a haybox. On the military side, the closest thing is that MREs are already pre-cooked, eliminating the need to cook entirely. But in field kitchens, in units cooking with large kettles, saving fuel is again a critical engineering problem, and some military manuals recommend insulated cooking vessels that work on exactly the haybox logic. Two worlds arrived at the same physical principle. Heat held in an insulated environment keeps slowly cooking the food in different centuries, from different needs. 3. The MRE's oxygen absorber. Inside MRE packs, there's one more small packet that usually goes unnoticed: the oxygen absorber. This little packet, containing fine iron powder, chemically absorbs the oxygen left in the package, neutralizing it by rusting the iron. This drops the oxygen level around the food to nearly zero, making bacteria and mold growth far harder. This is actually a technique you can use at home too. The oxygen absorber packets, anyone storing rice or wheat in 5-gallon buckets, uses are the same basic technology as the ones in MREs. Only at military scale, each packet is individually tested and passed through quality control. On the Amish side, there's no such chemical technology, but the cool, dark environment of the root cellar and the tight lid of a glass jar achieve a similar effect by natural means while not dropping oxygen entirely to zero, reducing it significantly. An interesting detail, some Amish families use the technique of filling the jar with boiling water and closing it immediately to reduce the air inside. As the hot steam cools and condenses, a slight vacuum forms inside the jar, and when you hear the lid pop down, you know that vacuum has formed. Simple but effective, a solution that needs no chemicals at all. 2. The Amish tradition of a 1-year food store. There's a common practice among Amish families, before winter sets in, storing enough food to last a full year. This isn't crisis prep, it's a normal way of life that has continued for centuries. Cellars are filled with canned vegetables, grain bins with wheat, the smokehouse with meat, in the last weeks of autumn. What modern prepper culture usually does as a reaction to a disaster scenario, Amish communities have practiced uninterrupted for generations as a normal rhythm of life. They aren't expecting a crisis, they just don't know what winter will bring, and they stay prepared against that uncertainty. Which of these two viewpoints do you think is wiser, reacting to a crisis, or doing the same preparation every year without waiting for one at all? The answer may be hidden in the rest of the list. On the military side, this is known as logistical pre-positioning. Before troops move into a region, the supplies they'll need are placed in depots ahead of time. The two systems are almost identical in philosophy. Preparing against uncertainty, ahead of need. The military writes it into an operation plan, the Amish into the calendar, the last week of harvest season, a ritual everyone knows and no one questions. 1. The common point, the 3-year rule. And now we come to the real point that ties all 14 of these items together. The military's official MRE standard, a 3-year guaranteed shelf life at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, verified by laboratory testing. Now look at the Amish side. Home canning prepared under the right conditions is traditionally passed down, generation to generation, with the rule that it's safely edible for at least 3 years. Not an official laboratory, but a century of practical experience. 2 systems. One reached this number with a $1 billion military research budget, with chemical engineers, with accelerated aging tests. The other arrived at the same number with no laboratory at all, only observation passed from generation to generation. There's no communication, no cooperation between the military and Amish communities, and yet both independently meet at the number 3 years. This is no coincidence. Physics and chemistry are the same for everyone. Moisture, oxygen, temperature, spoil, food, the same way, no matter who's storing it. The military discovered this with formulas. The Amish discovered it with centuries of experience. But both reach the same truth. Under the right conditions, the right food can wait safely for 3 years. Picture it: a white-coated scientist in a Pentagon lab, and a bonnet-wearing grandmother on an Amish farm will never meet, will never be in the same room. But both, in their own worlds, arrived at the same conclusion. It shows just how universal a science preparedness really is. Ideology, level of technology, or belief don't matter. Physics forces the same rules on everyone. Closing. Soldier food and the Amish kitchen, 2 worlds that look nothing alike on paper. One is technology and engineering, the other, tradition and patience. But both reach the same conclusion, because both are fighting the same physical reality. Honey, salt, canned goods, dry wheat, whichever side's name it carries, the principle is always the same. Block the moisture, block the oxygen, and time is on your side. Now picture this. A weather alert goes off on your phone. A storm is coming. You look outside. Your neighbors are jumping in their cars and rushing to the store. The shelves will be empty within hours. But you walk into your kitchen, open the cellar, and everything is already there, put in place months ago, with no rush at all. Tested in a military laboratory, or proven over generations in an Amish cellar. It doesn't matter, a system that works is a system that works. In that moment, you don't need to rush to the store because you're already prepared. Which of these 15 items is missing from your kitchen right now? Tell me in the comments, it shows me which topic to cover in the next video. Subscribe to Stockpile Man, this is where we talk facts.